What if everyone tried to kill Palpatine? What would have happened then? So in this timeline, halfway through the Clone Wars, the Jedi Council became aware of Palpatine being the Sith Lord Sidious. Their discovery came after spying on him and finding him walking around in a ridiculously lowered hood at night. Behavior Master Yoda declared only a Sith would find sufficiently edgy. The Council decided to kill him immediately. Being aware of the ancient Sith technique that somehow made opponents stand motionless while getting stabbed, the Jedi High Council Masters and Anakin required a countermeasure. So Yoda quickly arranged a meeting at level 1313 with his Undercity contact, who could provide force-nullifying Isalamiri, rare lizard-like creatures from the planet Mirkor, capable of creating bubbles in which the Force could not be accessed. When the contact quoted a surprisingly steep price for the 5 specimens needed, funding proved challenging. Yoda transferred a substantial sum from the Order's discretionary budget, a move that raised eyebrows among the Council's financial advisors. "Question my expenditure authorization, you should not," Yoda had insisted, while approving the transaction that would restrict their operational spending for the next month. With credit secured, Yoda insisted they needed disguises to avoid Coruscant's omnipresent surveillance network. Time constraints eliminated custom options, forcing them to raid the temple archives for ancient Sith costumes preserved since the Battle of Ruusan. Masters Yoda, Obi-Wan, Ki-Adi-Mundi, Kit Fisto, Mace Windu, Agen Kolar, Shaak Ti, and Anakin put on the Sith garments, complete with masks. We pick up with them walking toward the shuttle that would transport them to level 1313. Let's begin. The ill-fitting Sith costumes rustled as the group of Jedi made their way through the temple's lower corridors toward the landing platform. Anakin's shoulders slumped beneath the heavy black fabric that hung awkwardly from his frame. "I must say, Lord Skywalker," Obi-Wan intoned with exaggerated formality, his voice muffled behind an ancient mask adorned with faded crimson markings, "you are standing dangerously close to that light fixture. A true Sith must remain in darkness at all times." Anakin immediately leapt sideways into a patch of shadow, affecting a theatrical pose. "Ah yes, Lord Kenobi, the light disgusts me greatly." The corridor filled with laughter, including a high-pitched cackle from atop Anakin's shoulders, where Master Yoda perched. The diminutive Jedi Master had proven impossible to outfit properly. None of the preserved masks accommodated his unique features. Instead, he wore torn black fabric, fashioned into a makeshift hood that constantly slipped over his eyes. "Carry an umbrella, you must, Lord Skywalker," Yoda advised, with mock seriousness. "Protection from the light, it will provide." "Yes, my lord," Anakin replied with an exaggerated bow that nearly toppled him forward. Shaak Ti adjusted her mask, a fearsome visage with jagged teeth and pronounced brow ridges. "Why do they all wear these ridiculous masks anyway?" she asked, through fits of laughter. "To shield their delicate faces from ultraviolet rays," Mace Windu offered dryly, his deep voice incongruous with the comically oversized eye holes of his mask. "Indeed," Kit Fisto proclaimed. "UV rays are a path to the light side." Agen Kolar tapped his mask's cheek contemplatively. "Also, have you noticed how they all look as though they've contracted foot fungus on their faces?" "Quite repulsive," Ki-Adi-Mundi agreed, adjusting his too-tight mask over his elongated cranium. "If my face looked like that, I'd wear a thick mask and never take it off either." Their collective laughter echoed through the corridor as they approached the shuttle. The vessel waited with engines idling, its boarding ramp extended in welcome. Ki-Adi-Mundi took the pilot's seat, his tall head bumping against the ceiling. The shuttle lifted from the temple landing pad and descended through Coruscant's atmospheric lanes. The gleaming towers of the upper levels gradually gave way to industrial zones, then to the perpetual twilight of the Undercity. They passed through layer after layer of urban development until reaching the notorious level 1313. Per Yoda's guidance, Ki-Adi-Mundi guided the craft toward an unmarked landing pad atop a dilapidated structure. The shuttle settled with a mechanical groan, its landing struts adjusting to the uneven surface. "My contact. Arrive soon he will," Yoda informed them as they disembarked onto the grimy rooftop. "Meet him at establishment nearby. We must." He peered from beneath his makeshift hood, ears twitching. "Isalamiri, soon in our possession they will be. Then, deal with Sidious. We can..." Anakin suddenly froze mid-step, his posture rigid beneath the cumbersome Sith robes. His eyes narrowed behind his mask. "I feel a presence," he murmured, voice dropping to a near whisper. "A presence I have not felt since..." He paused dramatically. "This afternoon. Lord Skywalker, Anakin, where the criff are you going?" Obi-Wan called as his former Padawan abruptly spun around and launched himself over the rooftop's edge toward an adjacent alleyway, Yoda still clinging to his back. Yoda protested, tiny fingers digging into Anakin's shoulders. Slow you must go! Anakin executed several nimble jumps between walls, pipes, and ledges before landing in a narrow passage. 4 armored figures stood silhouetted against the ambient glow of distant neon signs. Their Mandalorian helmets reflected fragments of light as they turned toward the newcomers. The tallest Mandalorian tilted their helmet, attention fixing not on Anakin but on the diminutive figure perched on his shoulders. "Master Yoda?" a familiar voice inquired through the helmet's vocoder. Anakin's attention snapped to the shortest of the Mandalorians, standing slightly apart from the others. Something in their posture triggered recognition. "Padme?" he asked, voice uncertain. The figure removed their helmet, revealing Senator Amidala's face, framed by wisps of dark hair. Her eyes were rimmed with black paint in a tactical pattern that reduced glare, or perhaps simply added dramatic effect. "Annie?" she exclaimed with uncharacteristic exuberance. Anakin tore off his mask despite Yoda's protests. Padme rushed forward as Anakin's face emerged from behind the ancient Sith visage, his smile spreading across his features. She flung herself into his arms, and he lifted her effortlessly, spinning her in a tight circle. "I missed you, my precious," she murmured against his neck. "Only a few hours it has been. Healthy this is not," Yoda grumbled as he hopped off Anakin's shoulders onto a nearby crate, eyeing the remaining Mandalorians with suspicion. One by one, the others removed their helmets. Bail Organa nodded formally toward Yoda. Mon Mothma shook out her auburn hair as she set her helmet aside. The 4 struggled with the clasp of his helmet until finally yanking it free to reveal the distinctive Gungan face of Jar Jar Binks. Anakin finally lowered Padme to the ground, though their hands remained intertwined. "What are you all doing here?" he asked, bewilderment evident in his tone. Jar Jar bobbed his head enthusiastically. "We's gonna kill Palpatine. He's a bombat crazy. Muy dangerous." "Really? Us too, Jar Jar," Anakin replied, eyebrows raised in surprise. Yoda tapped his Geimer stick against the crate. "Killing him, why are you?" Bail exchanged glances with Mon before answering. "We've discovered he's a Sith Lord, mentally unbalanced, and orchestrating the destruction of the Republic. We cannot allow that to happen." "Wait, how did you know he's a Sith?" Anakin asked, his attention divided between the conversation and Padme, whose fingers tightened around his as though they hadn't seen each other in years, rather than a couple of hours. "He's literally gone mentally insane," Padme explained. "He can't distinguish between his internal thoughts and speech anymore. We learned this during a meeting with him." "How?" Yoda inquired. Mon Mothma, noting how Padme and Anakin seemed more interested in gazing at each other than contributing to the conversation, settled herself on a nearby crate. "It began several months ago," she explained, adjusting her disguise. "During a Senate budget meeting, he began narrating his own life." Months ago, a bright conference room in the Senate building. Sunlight poured through wide windows onto Bail, Mon, Padme, and other senators seated around a polished table. Chancellor Palpatine presided, initially pleasant and gracious. Their budget discussion proceeded normally until Palpatine's behavior shifted. His voice remained cordial while suddenly switching to a deeper, more sinister tone for certain phrases. Senator Amidala looks at Palpatine, thinking she sees a mentor. He narrated in a rasping, menacing voice, staring at Padme intensely. But little does she know this figure will end the Republic and bring forth a Sith Empire. "Chancellor, are you all right?" Padme asked worriedly. "Of course, my dear," he smiled pleasantly. Then his voice dropped to a malevolent hiss. "The fools only see light reflected off me. The shadow, Darth Sidious, my true self, remains hidden where light cannot reach." He finished with a chilling laugh. Alarmed glances circulated. Padme looked to Mon, both then turning to Sly Moore, who covered her face in mortification. Masameda rose, trying to salvage the situation. "The Chancellor has other appointments," he announced. "And perhaps we should conclude." "Oh, of course." Palpatine nodded politely. Then his face contorted as his voice deepened. "The alien speaks when not spoken to. He'll learn his place in my empire as my dog." "Chancellor," Bail cut in, disturbed. Yes?" Palpatine's voice returned to normal. "I think it's time we leave," Bail suggested. "So it is, my friends," Palpatine agreed pleasantly. As they exited, his sinister voice followed. "The Alderaanian knows not how accurate his words are." Back in the present, Mon concluded her account just as a rodent scurried out from beneath her crate. She leapt up with a startled exclamation. Jar Jar, attempting to help, inadvertently stepped on the creature and sent it to the afterlife. "Oopsie, Misa, sorry, little fella." These incidents became more frequent, Bail continued, grimacing at the unfortunate rodent. He once shouted about clone troops having implanted chips programmed to kill Jedi. Eventually, our meeting requests were denied entirely. This explains why we were unable to secure audiences, Yoda mused. Why did you not bring this information to the Jedi Council? Anakin asked. We feared the Order might be compromised, Mon explained. Palpatine occasionally ranted about Master Yoda's blindness to his machinations. Padme turned to Anakin, their hands still intertwined. When I heard the Jedi were at risk, I knew we had to act. I didn't tell you because I feared it may put you in danger. Anakin pulled her into another embrace, resting his chin atop her head. Mon observed their romantic display with the theatrical gagging gesture, as if their affection was making her physically ill. She directed the exaggerated reaction at Bail, who suppressed his smile at her dramatics. We planned to suffocate him, Bail explained, refocusing the conversation. But we needed these force-nullifying creatures to neutralize his powers first. Ysalamiri, Yoda confirmed with a nod. The same objective, we have. The other Jedi soon arrived, and they all discussed their plans. Mon mentioned they intended to purchase 10 Ysalamiri for their operation. How did you fund the Ysalamiri? Yoda asked, surprise evident in his voice. Enormous sum required. Bail looked puzzled. Our contact said they're quite common. Inexpensive, actually, even served at a restaurant nearby. Comparing information, they discovered the same Sabrak merchant had quoted the Jedi an astronomical price. The senators explained how their political experience had immediately revealed the scam, while Yoda's centuries of temple seclusion had left him vulnerable to such deception. The substantial sum from the Order's discretionary budget he had authorized now seemed particularly foolish. Yoda's face darkened as the realization hit him. The Jedi decided to accompany the senators to their arranged meeting location, an abandoned factory, to confront the merchant. There, the Sabrak arrived with his bag. 10 Ysalamiri as promised. Got to sell the rest to some creepy old fool who'll pay 1,000 times market price. The Jedi emerged from hiding, though their traditional force abilities were already diminishing in the Ysalamiri's presence. Yoda stumbled forward. He growled, but found his connection to the Force completely severed by the creatures nearby. Without it, he couldn't even properly wield his lightsaber. Allow me, Master. Anakin stepped forward, physically activating the weapon before dispatching the scammer with a decisive strike. Their combined fleet, 2 shuttles now, rose through Coruscant's levels toward the Senate district. The creatures proved effective. Within their proximity, the Jedi sensed nothing of the Force, confirming their value for the mission ahead. 4 senators and 8 Jedi against 1 elderly politician, Kit Fisto observed, his characteristic smile absent. How difficult can this be? Night had fallen by the time they reached the Chancellor's private landing platform. The guards stationed there fell quickly, some to sleep gas deployed by the senators, others to precisely aimed stun blasts. Mon activated a signal jammer while Shakti disabled these security systems with a slicing spike. Their procession through the executive corridors drew no attention. The Ysalamiri were transported in a repulsor-equipped cage, their force-nullifying bubble extending around the entire group. Yoda, unable to access his usual abilities, remained perched on Anakin's shoulder, determined to witness Sidious's downfall. They found Palpatine asleep at his desk. Chancellor, Mace's voice boomed. Palpatine jerked awake, blinking rapidly as he took in the bizarre tableau before him. 7 figures in ancient Sith robes, 4 in Mandalorian armor, and 1 diminutive Sith that could only be Yoda standing by the door. His momentary confusion quickly gave way to his now habitual narration. The intruders believe they've caught Sidious unaware, but little do they realize. Shut the f*** up, Mace interrupted, advancing with Bail, who held a transparent bag. What should have been a swift operation dissolved into chaos. Palpatine rose with unexpected agility despite the force-nullifying environment. They'd agreed to combat without lightsabers. The force-nullifying field made precise saber handling impossible, and they needed Palpatine's death to appear as suffocation or heart failure. Lightsaber wounds would immediately implicate the Jedi, while plastic bags and bare hands could be attributed to any assassin. They all charged simultaneously, 7 Jedi and 4 senators converging from every angle. Palpatine moved like a combat droid with perfect programming, ducking under Mace's swing while redirecting Bail into Kit Fisto. He spun between Anakin and Obi-Wan, causing them to collide. Padme and Mon attacked low while Ki-Adi-Mundi went high, but Palpatine executed a split-second twisting leap that sent both senators tumbling while his boot connected with Ki-Adi's elongated cranium. Jar Jar's chaotic movements briefly disrupted Palpatine's rhythm until the Chancellor grabbed the Gungan's arm and used him as a flailing weapon against Shakti and Agent Kolar. Bodies flew in all directions as Palpatine maintained the center of the whirlwind, each movement flowing into the next with mechanical precision. The Force is unnecessary when one masters all physical disciplines, Palpatine explained calmly as he systematically dismantled their coordinated assault. This son of a bitch is on steroids," Mace growled, wiping blood from his lip as he regrouped with the others. Yoda watched from the doorway, his small frame unable to contribute without access to the Force. His eyes tracked the impossible display of martial prowess unfolding before him. Palpatine, sensing the source of his disadvantage, broke through their formation and lunged toward the Ysalamiri cage. With unexpected savagery, he tore at the container, attempting to consume one of the creatures raw. "If I devour them, their power becomes mine," he declared, his Chancellor persona completely abandoned. His eyes met Yoda's across the chamber. "My little green friend," he began with mock. "Friends, we are not," Yoda replied, drawing a concealed blaster from within his robes and firing. Palpatine ducked with preternatural speed, the bolt missing him by millimeters. In a simultaneous rush, all 11 attackers surged forward, attempting to dogpile Palpatine and pin him beneath their collective weight. For a split second, they thought they had him, until he exploded outward with impossible strength, physically throwing bodies in all directions. Landing atop his desk in a perfect stance, he stood tall in his dark robes, one arm slightly extended in a beckoning gesture. His posture radiated absolute confidence and control of the situation. The fight began anew, a brutal display of combat mastery. Palpatine deflected Mace's strike with an open palm block, following with a rapid series of precise finger strikes that sent the Jedi Master reeling. He executed perfect spinning kicks that caught both Kit Fisto and Shaak Ti mid-approach. His body weaved like fluid between Anakin's desperate lunges, while his acrobatic maneuvers kept him just beyond Obi-Wan's reach. The senators fared no better. Bail's tackle attempt was redirected with a subtle shifting technique that used his own momentum to send him crashing into Mothma. Padme's precision strikes were neutralized by Palpatine's forearm blocks before he swept her legs with a lightning-fast low kick. Jar Jar's unpredictable movements briefly confused the Chancellor until Palpatine adapted to the chaotic pattern, using the Gungan's erratic energy against him. Bodies once again littered the floor across the chamber as Palpatine stood triumphant atop his desk, 11 opponents groaning on the ground around him. Only Yoda remained upright near the door. Palpatine's eyes locked onto the tiny Jedi Master. He stepped forward, confidence radiating from every movement, then suddenly clutched at his chest. His eyes bulged as he gasped for air. The extreme physical exertion combined with whatever stimulants he'd taken had finally overwhelmed his system. With a final bewildered expression, the Sith Lord collapsed, his heart giving out beneath the strain. Yoda hobbled forward, prodding the fallen Chancellor with his Geimer stick. "Get up, children! Dead he is," Yoda announced, prodding the Chancellor once more with his stick. Slowly the others began to stir. Anakin groaned as he pulled himself to his feet. Obi-Wan winced, helping Kit Fisto up. Across the room, Mon Mothma was checking Padme for injuries, while Bail stared at Palpatine's lifeless form with a mixture of relief and disappointment. Bail approached with his plastic bag still clutched in his hand. "I had hoped to finish this properly," he said, quietly. Mon placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. Footsteps in the corridor silenced their conversation. They tensed, preparing for another confrontation as the door slid open. Sly Moore and Mas Amedda stood frozen in the doorway. Between them floated a repulsor lift cage containing several Ysalamiri. They stared at Palpatine's crumpled form on the floor. "Is he dead?" Sly asked, her normally quiet voice cutting through the silence. "Dead, he is," Yoda confirmed. The pair cautiously approached the group of Jedi and senators who had all shed their disguises during the chaotic fight. Sly Moore's pale features slowly curved into an unexpected smile. Mas Amedda stumbled backward into a chair, his legs giving out beneath him, a lifetime of tension visibly draining from his posture. More footsteps approached from the corridor. They all turned to see Commander Fox leading a squad of clone troopers, the ones in the rear also carrying a cage of Ysalamiri. The four groups stared at each other in dawning comprehension. "It seems we all misjudged each other," Bail said eventually, breaking the awkward silence. After comparing notes, they agreed on a common narrative. The truth required little embellishment. Palpatine had indeed died from what medical droids later termed cardiac failure due to excessive stimulant use. The Chancellor had apparently been consuming massive quantities of performance-enhancing compounds to help him sleep, a bizarre contradiction that aligned with his deteriorating mental state. The official announcement cited these findings while omitting the 4 separate assassination attempts. Count Dooku was found dead days later. Without Sidious to help him count his daily stimulant injections, he'd administered 20 doses when 2 sounded suspiciously low, and promptly died. General Grievous, isolated and outmaneuvered, was captured and cooked alive by vengeful Gungans. The war ended within weeks, the stock market crashed. Anakin and Padme finally abandoned the pretense of secrecy, openly celebrating their marriage on Naboo. Sly Moore and Mas Amedda transitioned into respected diplomats in the new government, Commander Fox and his squad were commended for their timely arrival at the Chancellor's office that fateful night, earning prestigious assignments far from any battlefield. Everybody lived happily ever after. The end. Master Yoda shorted Tatooine Moisture Farming Mutual just before an unexpected rainy season.